banks and schools have been closed for nearly 2 weeks. These clashes broke out on the street just this morning, and the Prime Minister's resignation doesn't end everything. Actually, it leaves a lot more questions still to be answered. And it's worth remembering that all this is happening in a very small country of just 6 million people, but it's geopolitically unique. Lebanon sits nestled next to Israel and Syria, many of its factions and religions making it a volatile melting pot. So let's debrief all that's going on in the country. I'm joined by Mark Daou. He's a protester and a media professor at the American University of Beirut. Great to have you on the programme, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I'd like to start by asking you how satisfied you are by the resignation of Hariri, and who would you like to see him replaced with?
We're extremely satisfied by the results that have been achieved so far. This government, and it's not just Hariri, it's the entire government, because this government got 90% support in parliament. So it's a strong blow to the entire regime formed by multiple political parties across the spectrum, which have consolidated their power to effectively have a power grab over Lebanon and steal public funds, go all the way in nepotism and corruption. So a strong hit at the downing of that particular government now means there's a real opportunity for effective change and reform in the country. So whoever will come next, our priorities are for independent, non-politically aligned individuals with high technical skills to try and save the country from the huge economic debt that we have, the mismanagement, as well as the legacy of corruption and nepotism prevalent in the country. So what we're looking at now is getting strong-willed, capable individuals to actually run this country into a safe course that can be sustainable. That requires, again, containing the political parties which are dominant in Lebanon, which includes Hezbollah, the Amal movement, and those that have been in power, Aounist and the others, that have been in power for the past 15 years, running the country to the ground.
And Professor, how do you actually affect that change? The protest is still going on. What are you going to do? Corruption and nepotism. What are you going to do precisely to make that happen?
Yeah, it's an ongoing fight with government, so we will continue to occupy squares all across the country. There are about 8 to 10 established camps of protesters across all the countries, all the country in all regions, across all sectarian factions. So basically this is a mass national movement which is creating a lot of pressure, and the results of that pressure is the banks have been closed, schools, universities are closed. We're creating a lot of pressure which has literally taken out all credibility from the governing institutions. So to regain trust and to open up the system again, which would allow people to spend money and reactivate all of those institutions, that requires a strong positive push through a government that gains the trust of the population and allows for a peaceful transition from what we currently have into a more stable, more democratic and more accountable government to its people. If that doesn't happen, then what we're looking at is a power grab by the militias, mafias and others who are currently in government, going for a power grab similar to what's happening in Venezuela. And we're trying to avoid that scenario and negotiate a peaceful transition to the situation where the government is stable politically as well as economically, and the people in the streets are convinced that we have a government that is capable of leading us out of the economic traumas that we've been through, as well as from the political manipulation that has occurred over the legal institutions of parliament and government.
Professor, if I could just ask you finally and briefly, why do you think that the world needs to pay attention to this, and do you want the international community to do anything?
I think what we're seeing, given the diversity of Lebanon, given all the risks that are in Lebanon, the risks from Israel, the risk from the Syrian war, over this small country with all of its diversity, religious and otherwise, and its openness to the Western world, everyone is multilingual closely or nearly in this country. I think this is a monumental milestone in the Arab communities where we're transforming towards a population which is actively holding its government government accountable and actively participating in forming what type of government is running this country.
Professor Mark Daou, thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate your time.